The courtroom was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. The air smelled faintly of metal and polish, a reminder that this wasn't just any ordinary court. High above the city, floating on a platform powered by advanced technology, the courtroom looked more like a spaceship than a place where people argued over laws. Rows of seats filled with spectators faced the front, where a large table stood beneath a glowing screen. That screen displayed the name of the case, State versus Lena Porter. Lena sat at the defendant's table, her hands resting calmly on its smooth surface. She wore a dark suit that fit perfectly, her posture straight but relaxed. Her expression gave nothing away, though inside, she felt a storm brewing. Across from her sat the prosecutor, a man named Carl Jenkins, who shuffled papers with an air of confidence. Beside him hovered Veritas 7, the courtroom AI, a sleek silver machine shaped like a tall cylinder with glowing blue rings circling its body. Its voice had already been heard several times, cold and precise as it read out rules and procedures. At the center of it all sat Judge Harold Grimes, an older man with thinning gray hair and sharp eyes behind thick glasses. He leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his desk. His face showed no warmth, only impatience. Lena had seen judges like him before, men who thought their position made them untouchable. She knew this wouldn't be easy. "Proceed," Judge Grimes said, finally, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. Carl Jenkins stood up immediately, smoothing his tie. "Your Honor," he began, "the defendant, Ms. Lena Porter, has been charged with violating Article 47 of the Interplanetary Trade Act. Specifically, she is accused of smuggling restricted materials from Mars into Earth territory without proper clearance." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Smuggling? From Mars? The idea sounded almost absurd, yet everyone leaned forward, eager to hear more. Lena didn't move, her gaze steady as Carl continued. "These materials are classified as hazardous under international law," Carl went on, pointing to a holographic image that appeared above the witness stand. It showed what looked like small vials filled with shimmering liquid. "They pose a significant risk to public safety and could destabilize trade relations between Earth and Mars. We have evidence linking these items directly to Ms. Porter." Lena raised an eyebrow. Evidence? She hadn't even seen those vials before today. Still, she kept her mouth shut. Interrupting now would only make things worse. Judge Grimes nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing. "Ms. Porter, how do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor," Lena replied, her voice clear and strong. There was no hesitation in her tone, no trace of fear. She had spent years defending others in court. Now she would defend herself. Grimes frowned slightly as if annoyed by her composure. "Very well. Prosecution may present its case." Carl stepped forward again, gesturing to Veritas 7. "With permission, Your Honor, I will call upon our primary witness, the AI system Veritas 7, to provide analysis of the evidence." Veritas 7's blue rings pulsed brighter as it activated. "Analysis complete," it announced in its mechanical voice. "The materials in question match signatures associated with Ms. Porter's personal transport vehicle. Furthermore, records indicate unauthorized departure from Mars airspace during the time frame corresponding to the alleged offense." The words hung heavy in the room. Unauthorized departure? Lena clenched her jaw. She knew exactly why her ship had left Mars early. It was part of her mission. But explaining that here wouldn't help. Not yet. "And what about intent?" Lena asked suddenly, surprising everyone. All eyes turned to her. "Even if my ship carried those materials, there's no proof I intended to break any laws?" Carl smirked. "Intent can be inferred based on actions, Ms. Porter. Flying without clearance suggests deliberate disregard for regulations." "That's not true," Lena shot back. "I was following orders, official orders, from the U.S. government. If you'd bothered to check, you'd know that." Now it was Carl's turn to look surprised. He glanced at Judge Grimes, who waved a hand dismissively. "Speculation isn't evidence, Ms. Porter. Stick to facts." Lena bit back a retort. Arguing further would only dig her deeper into trouble. Instead, she focused on observing the judge. Something about him seemed off. His tone was too harsh, too quick to dismiss her arguments. Was he biased? Or worse, had someone pressured him to rule against her? As Carl continued presenting his case, Lena let her mind wander briefly. She thought about her last assignment on Mars, a diplomatic mission meant to ease tensions between Earth and Martian colonies. Things had gone smoothly until she discovered something troubling: secret experiments involving artificial intelligence in human subjects. Someone powerful wanted that information buried, and they'd clearly decided to discredit her as a distraction. Back in the present, Carl wrapped up his opening statement. In conclusion, Your Honor, the evidence overwhelmingly supports the charges against Ms. Porter. We ask for a conviction and appropriate penalties. Judge Grimes nodded again, looking bored. Defense may respond. Lena stood, taking a deep breath. She walked to the center of the room, facing the judge and jury. For a moment, she simply stood there, letting the weight of her presence fill the space. Then she began speaking. Your Honor, members of the court, she said, her voice carrying authority despite the situation. What you're seeing here isn't justice, it's manipulation. The so-called evidence against me is incomplete, taken out of context and deliberately misleading. Yes, I traveled from Mars recently, but I did so with full authorization from the highest levels of the U.S. government. My mission involved sensitive negotiations aimed at protecting both Earth and Mars. Unfortunately, certain parties don't want those negotiations to succeed, and they've targeted me to stop them. She paused, letting her words sink in. Some of the jurors exchanged glances, unsure what to think. Even Carl looked uneasy. I'm not asking for special treatment, Lena added. All I'm asking is for a fair trial, one where the truth matters more than preconceived notions or hidden agendas. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Judge Grimes leaned forward, his expression hardening. Enough, he snapped. This court doesn't deal in conspiracy theories, Ms. Porter. Stick to the facts or sit down. Lena returned to her seat, her heart pounding. She had expected resistance, but this level of hostility was alarming. Whatever happened next, she realized, depended entirely on her ability to fight back, not just legally but strategically. As the session adjourned for lunch, Lena stared at the glowing screen displaying her name. She knew the odds were stacked against her. But she also knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going down without a fight. The lunch break gave Lena some time to think, though not much peace. The courtroom cafeteria was crowded with reporters, spectators, and even a few curious lawyers who had heard whispers of the high-profile case. Lena found a quiet corner near the windows, where sunlight streamed in through tall glass panels. She ordered a plain sandwich and coffee but barely touched them. Her mind raced faster than she could eat. She pulled out her tablet and opened a secure folder marked Personal Files. Inside were documents from her recent mission on Mars, reports, memos, and encrypted messages that proved her innocence. But none of it mattered unless she could get the court to listen. Someone had tampered with the records, erasing all mention of her official clearance and replacing it with fake data. Whoever did this knew exactly how to exploit the system. Lena sighed, rubbing her temples. She thought about Judge Grimes's dismissive tone and Carl Jenkins's smug smile. They weren't just opponents. They were part of something bigger. This wasn't just about her. It was about silencing anyone who threatened the powerful interests behind the illegal experiments she'd uncovered. Her thoughts were interrupted when a young man approached her table. He looked nervous, shifting from one foot to the other. Ms. Porter, he whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. Can I talk to you for a second? Lena frowned. Who are you? My name's Ethan, he said quickly. I work as an assistant programmer for Veritas 7, the courtroom AI. I overheard something earlier about your case. Lena straightened, her interest piqued. Go on. Ethan hesitated, then leaned closer. Someone hacked into Veritas 7 last night. They fed it false information about you, stuff that doesn't match the real database. That's why it keeps saying your transport vehicle carried those vials. It's not true. Lena felt a chill run down her spine. Do you know who did it? Ethan shook his head. No, but I can try to find out. Just be careful, okay? These people, they're dangerous. Before Lena could respond, Ethan turned and hurried away, disappearing into the crowd. She watched him go, her mind spinning. So the corruption ran deeper than she'd thought. Not only had someone falsified evidence, but they'd also compromised the very system meant to ensure fairness. When the trial resumed, Lena walked back into the courtroom with renewed determination. She couldn't rely on anyone else to fix this. Not the judge, not the AI, and certainly not the prosecution. It was up to her. Carl Jenkins wasted no time picking up where he'd left off. Your Honor, he began, addressing Judge Grimes, we now present additional testimony from Commander Ryan Dawson, head of planetary security at the Mars checkpoint. A tall man in uniform took the stand, his face stern. He introduced himself and explained that Lena's ship had triggered alarms upon departure due to unregistered cargo. We flagged it immediately, he said. Further scans revealed hazardous materials consistent with the items recovered later. Lena listened carefully, noting inconsistencies in his story. If her ship had triggered alarms, why hadn't anyone stopped her before she left Mars? And why hadn't they mentioned this during her initial debriefing? Commander Dawson, Lena said, standing up, did you personally inspect my ship before or after these alleged scans? Dawson shifted uncomfortably. Not personally, no. My team handled it. So you didn't see the materials yourself? No, but... And yet you're testifying as though you did. Lena crossed her arms. Isn't that hearsay? Judge Grimes banged his gavel. Ms. Porter, refrain from badgering the witness. Lena sat down, frustration bubbling beneath her calm exterior. Every question she asked seemed to hit a wall, blocked by rules or objections. Still, she pressed on. Commander Dawson, she tried again. How long have you worked at the Mars checkpoint? 5 years, he replied stiffly. In that time, how many ships have been flagged for carrying hazardous materials? I'm not sure of the exact number, but dozens, perhaps. Hundreds. And how many of those turned out to actually be carrying such materials? Dawson hesitated. Some did. Others were false positives. False positives, Lena repeated, letting the phrase hang in the air. So it's possible my ship fell into that category. That's speculation, Carl interjected. Move on, Miss Porter. But Lena wasn't done. One last question, Commander. Who authorized the release of my ship's scan data to the prosecution? Dawson glanced at Carl, then at Judge Grimes. I don't recall. Lena smiled faintly. You don't recall? Interesting. Judge Grimes scowled. Enough. Prosecution, call your next witness. As the day wore on, Carl presented more witnesses, all of whom contradicted each other in subtle ways. One claimed Lena had acted suspiciously during her mission, while another admitted they hadn't interacted with her at all. Each piece of evidence felt weaker than the last, yet Judge Grimes accepted it without question. By the end of the session, Lena was exhausted but resolved. She knew what she had to do. As the court adjourned for the evening, she slipped away to a private office, reserved for defendants. Pulling out her tablet, she accessed a hidden program she'd developed years ago, a tool designed to bypass corrupted systems and retrieve deleted files. It took hours of meticulous work, but eventually, Lena found what she was looking for. Fragments of her original clearance documents buried deep within the courtroom network. Someone had tried to erase them completely, but traces remained. With a few keystrokes, she pieced together enough to prove her authorization. Just as she finished, her tablet beeped with an incoming message. It was from an unknown sender, containing a single line of text, "Stop digging or you'll regret it." Lena stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Threats didn't scare her. That wasn't their goal. They wanted her to feel powerless, to give up. But she wouldn't. Not now. Not ever. The next morning, Lena arrived at the courthouse early, ready to fight back. She had one chance to turn the tables, and she intended to use it wisely. As she entered the courtroom, she noticed the atmosphere had changed. Reporters filled every seat, cameras flashing wildly. Word had spread about the mysterious smuggling charges, and public interest was skyrocketing. Judge Grimes called the session to order, his voice sharp. Prosecution, proceed. Carl stood confidently, believing victory was within reach. Your Honor, we now present our closing arguments. The evidence against Ms. Porter is overwhelming. Her actions threaten the stability of Earth-Mars relations and endanger countless lives. We urge the court to deliver a swift verdict of guilty. Lena waited patiently, her expression unreadable. When it was her turn, she rose slowly, holding her tablet tightly. Your Honor, she began, her voice steady. Before we conclude, I'd like to submit new evidence. Evidence that proves my innocence and exposes the truth behind these fabricated charges. The room erupted into murmurs. Carl's confident smirk faltered. Judge Grimes frowned deeply. What is this nonsense, Ms. Porter? It's not nonsense, Lena replied. It's justice. Allow me to demonstrate. With that, she activated, her tablet projecting the recovered documents onto the courtroom screen. Names, dates, and clearances appeared, undeniable proof of her authorization. Gasps echoed through the room as people realized the extent of the deception. Carl stammered, trying to regain control. This is irrelevant. It's hearsay. It's not hearsay, Lena countered. It's fact. And if you'll allow me, Your Honor, I can explain exactly how these lies came to exist. Judge Grimes hesitated, caught between anger and curiosity. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. Proceed. Lena turned to face the crowd, her eyes blazing with conviction. What you're seeing here is the result of corruption, a deliberate attempt to silence me because of what I discovered on Mars. Powerful individuals are conducting illegal experiments using human subjects, and they'll do anything to protect their secrets, including destroying lives. The courtroom fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. For the first time, Lena saw cracks in the system. The jurors exchanged uneasy glances. Even Judge Grimes seemed shaken. Lena stood tall at the center of the courtroom, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. The documents she had uncovered were now displayed on the glowing screen above the judge's bench for everyone to see. Names, dates, and official seals confirmed what she had been saying all along. She was authorized by the U.S. government to carry out her mission on Mars. The charges against her were fake, planted to discredit her. This evidence proves I had clearance, Lena said, pointing at the screen. It also shows that someone tampered with the records to make it look like I broke the law. That's not just a mistake, it's deliberate sabotage. Judge Grimes looked uneasy, his fingers drumming nervously on the desk. He glanced at Carl Jenkins, who was struggling to regain his composure. The prosecutor's face was red, his hands shaking slightly as he flipped through papers, searching for a way to counter Lena's claims. Your Honor, Carl finally managed to say, this so-called evidence could have been forged. It's too convenient. Ms. Porter is trying to distract us from the real issue here. Lena turned to face him, her expression calm but sharp. If it's forged, then why does it match the official database? Why does it include details only someone with high-level access would know? Carl opened his mouth to respond but stopped. When Veritas 7, the courtroom AI, chimed in. Its blue rings pulsed as it spoke in its cold mechanical voice.
Analysis confirms the authenticity of the documents presented by Ms. Porter. They align with unaltered sections of the global judicial network. The room fell silent. Even Judge Grimes seemed stunned. Carl shot a glare at the AI as if blaming
it for betraying him. Lena allowed herself a small smile. She had known Veritas 7 would side with the truth once it had access to untampered data. The AI couldn't lie. It was programmed to prioritize facts over bias. But Lena wasn't finished yet. She turned back to the judge. Your Honor, this isn't just about me. Someone went to great lengths to frame me because of what I discovered during my mission. I need permission to present additional testimony that will expose the real criminals behind this. Grimes hesitated, his eyes darting between Lena and Carl. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. Very well. You may proceed, Ms. Porter, but make it quick. Lena activated another file on her tablet, projecting a series of images onto the screen. They showed facilities hidden deep within Martian deserts, secret labs where scientists conducted illegal experiments using artificial intelligence in human subjects. Some of the pictures were grainy, taken covertly, but others were clear enough to reveal horrifying details. People hooked up to machines, their bodies connected to wires and tubes. These labs are part of a black market operation, Lena explained. They're experimenting on humans, combining them with advanced AI technology. The goal is to create super soldiers or worse, and these operations are funded by some of the most powerful corporations on Earth. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scrambled to take notes while cameras flashed wildly. Even the jurors leaned forward, their faces pale with shock. Carl Jenkins shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Lena continued, her tone firm. I found out about these labs during my diplomatic mission. When I tried to report it, someone decided it was easier to silence me than address the problem. That's why I'm being framed. That's why my records were erased. Judge Grimes rubbed his temples, looking overwhelmed. Ms. Porter, do you have proof of these allegations? Yes, Your Honor, Lena replied. She pressed a button on her tablet, and a video began playing on the screen. It showed a man in a lab coat speaking urgently into a camera. His face was partially obscured, but his words were clear. They're using prisoners, the man said, his voice trembling. People who disappear from Earth without explanation. They bring them here to Mars and experiment on them. If anyone finds out, they'll kill to keep it quiet. The video ended abruptly, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence. Lena let the weight of it sink in before speaking again. That man was one of the scientists involved in the project. He sent this recording to me before he disappeared. I don't know if he's alive or dead, but his warning is real. Carl Jenkins stood up abruptly, his face flushed with anger. This is absurd. Ms. Porter is fabricating stories to save herself. She has no credible witnesses, no solid evidence. Lena raised an eyebrow. No credible witnesses? What about Commander Dawson? Didn't he confirm that my ship triggered alarms due to unregistered cargo? Isn't it strange that none of those alarms led to an investigation until now? Dawson shifted, in his seat looking uncomfortable. He hadn't expected to be dragged back into the spotlight. Carl glared at him, silently demanding support, but Dawson avoided meeting his gaze. Lena pressed on. And what about Verita 7? The AI itself confirmed my clearance. Are we supposed to believe it's lying too? The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone could feel the case slipping away from Carl and Judge Grimes. For the first time, Lena saw cracks in their confidence. They weren't prepared for her to fight back this hard, or this effectively. Finally, Judge Grimes raised a hand to silence the murmurs spreading through the courtroom. Enough, he said, his voice heavy with frustration. Ms. Porter, you've made your point. However, I cannot dismiss the charges based solely on circumstantial evidence. Lena clenched her fists but kept her tone respectful. Then allow me to prove my innocence beyond any doubt. I request a Level 9 clearance check through the Global Judicial Network. It's the highest form of verification and will confirm my identity and authorization. Grimes frowned. A Level 9 clearance check was rarely used. It required direct access to classified government databases and could override even the most locked-down systems. Ordering one would expose the corruption within the court and potentially implicate powerful figures. But refusing it would look suspicious, especially after everything Lena had revealed. After a long pause, Grimes nodded stiffly. Very well. A Level 9 clearance check will be conducted. Veritas 7, initiate the process. The AI's blue rings pulsed brighter as it connected to the network. Seconds later, a new set of documents appeared on the screen. They listed Lena's full credentials: Special Prosecutor, Level 9 clearance, U.S. Department of Justice, Interplanetary Affairs Division. There was no denying it. She was exactly who she claimed to be. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Reporters shouted questions, spectators whispered excitedly, and Carl Jenkins sank into his chair defeated. Judge Grimes looked pale, his earlier arrogance replaced by fear. He realized he had presided over something far bigger than a simple smuggling case. Lena took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and determination. She had proven her innocence, but the battle wasn't over. The people behind the illegal experiments wouldn't stop just because she exposed them. If anything, they'd come after her harder than ever. As the session adjourned, Lena walked out of the courtroom surrounded by reporters. Cameras flashed in her face and microphones were thrust toward her, but she ignored them. Her focus was on what came next. She had uncovered the truth, but exposing it was only the first step. Now she needed to bring the perpetrators to justice and ensure no one else suffered because of their greed. Outside the courthouse, a group of protesters had gathered, holding signs that read, "Justice for Lena Porter and Stop Corporate Corruption." They cheered as she emerged, chanting her name. Lena felt a surge of gratitude but reminded herself not to get distracted. The road ahead would be dangerous, but she was ready. She climbed into a waiting car, closing the door behind her. As the vehicle sped away, she pulled out her tablet and opened a secure line to her contacts at the Department of Justice. It was time to escalate the fight. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Lena Porter wasn't backing down. The car sped through the city streets, weaving past towering skyscrapers and neon billboards. Inside, Lena sat with her tablet balanced on her lap, typing furiously. Her fingers moved quickly over the screen, sending encrypted messages to trusted allies within the Department of Justice. She knew time was running out. The people behind the illegal experiments wouldn't sit idle after being exposed. They'd strike back, and soon. As the vehicle pulled up to a secure building downtown, Lena stepped out and entered a private conference room. Waiting for her were two colleagues, Agent Rachel Monroe, a seasoned investigator known for her sharp instincts, and Officer Ben Carter, a tech expert who specialized in decoding classified data. Both had been briefed on the situation and were ready to help. "Thanks for coming," Lena said as she closed the door behind her. "We don't have much time." Rachel nodded, her expression serious. "What do you need us to do?" Lena placed her tablet on the table and projected the documents onto the wall. "This is everything I've uncovered so far. Labs on Mars conducting illegal experiments, corporations funding them, and evidence linking it all to powerful figures on Earth. Someone erased my clearance records and framed me to stop me from exposing this." Ben leaned forward, studying the files. "It's a lot to process. Do we have enough to take them down?" "We will," Lena replied firmly. "But we need more proof. Solid, undeniable proof that ties these operations directly to the people funding them. That means infiltrating their systems and finding the master list of names." Rachel crossed her arms. "And how do we do that without getting caught? These aren't amateurs. They'll be watching every move we make." Lena smiled faintly. "That's where you come in. I need you to dig into the corporate networks. Find anything unusual, unexplained transactions, hidden accounts, or connections to Martian facilities. Ben, I want you to hack into Veritas 7 again. See if there's a trail leading back to whoever tampered with its data." Ben raised an eyebrow. "You're asking me to break into one of the most advanced AIs ever created. Twice." "Yes," Lena said simply. "Can you do it?" He hesitated, then grinned. "Of course I can. Just give me some time." "Good," Lena said. "In the meantime, I'm going after something bigger. There's a whistleblower, a former scientist named Dr. Alan Hayes, who claims he has first-hand knowledge of the experiments. If we can find him, he might give us the testimony we need to shut this operation down for good." Rachel frowned. "If they're willing to frame you, they won't hesitate to silence him too. Are you sure this is safe?" "Safe doesn't matter anymore," Lena replied. "What matters is stopping them before they hurt anyone else." Later that night, Lena found herself sitting alone in a dimly lit apartment. It wasn't hers. It belonged to a friend who owed her a favor, but it was secure, at least for now. She stared at the glowing screen of her tablet, scrolling through old messages from Dr. Hayes. His last communication had come weeks ago, shortly before he disappeared. In it, he described the horrors he'd witnessed. Humans subjected to unimaginable pain, their bodies fused with machines in ways that defied ethics. Lena clenched her jaw, anger bubbling beneath her calm exterior. She couldn't let those responsible get away with this, not while she still had breath in her lungs. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Instinctively, she reached for the small device tucked into her pocket, a portable scrambler designed to disable surveillance equipment. She activated it before opening the door. Standing outside was a young woman, no older than 25, with messy hair and wide eyes. She held up her hands to show she meant no harm. "Ms. Porter, my name's Emily. I worked at one of the labs." Lena stepped aside, letting her in. "How did you find me?" Emily hesitated, glancing around, nervously. "Dr. Hayes sent me. Before he vanished, he told me to contact you if anything happened to him. He said you were the only person who could stop them." Lena nodded slowly. "Tell me everything you know." For the next hour, Emily spoke in hushed tones, describing the inner workings of the labs. She explained how prisoners were transported from Earth under false pretenses, lured by promises of freedom or new lives on Mars. Once there, they became test subjects, their bodies experimented on until they either died or were discarded. The scientists called them assets, reducing human lives to nothing more than tools for profit. "They're planning something big," Emily whispered. "Something called Project Eclipse. I don't know what it is, but it's scheduled to launch soon. They're moving equipment and personnel to a new facility, a secret location somewhere near the Martian equator." Lena's mind raced. If Project Eclipse succeeded, the consequences could be catastrophic. She needed to act fast. The next morning, Lena met with Rachel and Ben again. They had made progress overnight, uncovering financial records that linked several major corporations to the illegal labs. But the real breakthrough came when Ben managed to trace a signal embedded in Veritas 7's corrupted data. It led to a private server owned by a company called Novatech, one of the largest tech giants on Earth. "This is it," Ben said, pointing to the screen. "Novatech's CEO, Victor Lang, is tied directly to the labs. His name keeps popping up in every file we've accessed." Lena felt a surge of triumph mixed with dread. Victor Lang was untouchable, or so everyone thought. Taking him down would require more than evidence, it would require strategy. "We'll need reinforcements," Rachel suggested. "Maybe even federal agents." "No," Lena replied firmly. "Not yet. If word gets out, they'll destroy everything. For now, it's just us." She turned to Ben. "Can you track the location of their new facility based on the server data?" He nodded. "I think so. It'll take some time, though." "Do it," Lena said. "And prepare for extraction. We're heading to Mars." 2 days later, Lena stood aboard a sleek spacecraft bound for the Red Planet. Rachel and Ben accompanied her along with Emily, who insisted on helping despite the danger. As the ship lifted off, Lena gazed out the window at Earth growing smaller, in the distance. She felt a mix of determination and fear. What awaited them on Mars was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Failure wasn't an option. When they arrived, they landed in a remote area far from the main colonies. Using coordinates provided by Ben, they navigated toward the suspected facility. The terrain was harsh. Rocky plains stretched endlessly under a pale pink sky. But Lena pushed forward, her resolve unwavering. Finally, they reached the facility. It was hidden beneath layers of camouflage, almost invisible to the naked eye. Lena signaled for the others to stay back while she scouted ahead. Peering through a crack in the structure's outer wall, she saw rows of pods containing unconscious humans, their bodies connected to wires and tubes. Her heart sank. This was worse than she'd imagined. Suddenly alarms blared, shattering the silence. Guards emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn. Lena cursed under her breath. They'd been discovered. "Run!" she shouted, signaling for the others to retreat. Shots rang out as they fled, bullets narrowly missing them. Lena stayed behind to cover their escape. firing a stun gun she'd brought along. One by one, the guards fell, giving her team precious seconds to reach safety. They regrouped at a nearby ridge, panting and shaken. "What now?" Rachel asked, clutching her side. Lena looked back at the facility, her eyes blazing with determination. "Now we blow it up." Using explosives rigged by Ben, they planted charges around the perimeter of the building. As they detonated, flames erupted, consuming the lab and everything inside. The explosion echoed across the barren landscape, a fiery testament to justice served. But Lena knew this was only the beginning. Victor Lang and his cronies were still out there, plotting their next move. And she intended to be ready. As the group boarded their ship and prepared to leave Mars, Lena allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The road ahead would be long and dangerous, but she had proven one thing beyond doubt. Humans may falter, but when they stand together, they are unstoppable. The spacecraft descended through Earth's atmosphere, its engines roaring as it approached a secure landing pad near Washington, D.C. Inside, Lena sat with her team, their faces tense but focused. The mission on Mars had been successful. They'd destroyed the lab and disrupted Project Eclipse, but the real enemy was still out there. Victor Lang and his corporation, Novatech, were the roots of the corruption, and Lena knew they wouldn't stop until every trace of their operation was erased. As the ship touched down, Lena glanced at her companions. Rachel looked exhausted, but determined, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon for threats. Ben tapped nervously on his tablet, already analyzing data from the destroyed facility. Emily clutched her jacket tightly, her hands trembling. She had risked everything to help them, and now she seemed overwhelmed by what lay ahead. "We're not done yet," Lena said firmly, breaking the silence. "This is just the beginning." Rachel nodded. "What's the plan?" Lena leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "We expose Victor Lang. He thinks he's untouchable, but we've got enough evidence to bring him down. We need to get it into the right hands, someone who can't be bought or intimidated." Ben raised an eyebrow. "And who's that?" "Everyone. In this game has a price." "Not everyone," Lena replied. "There's a senator named Patricia Hayes. She's been fighting corporate corruption for years. If anyone can take this to the public, it's her." Later that evening, Lena stood outside Senator Hayes' office, her heart pounding. The building was quiet, most staff having left for the day. Only a few security guards remained, patrolling the halls. Lena had requested a private meeting, knowing the stakes were too high for anything less. When she entered the office, Senator Hayes greeted her with a warm but cautious smile. She was a middle-aged woman with sharp features and piercing blue eyes that missed nothing. Her desk was cluttered with papers and reports, a testament to her tireless work ethic. "Ms. Porter," Hayes said, gesturing for Lena to sit. "I've heard a lot about you. What brings you here?" Lena wasted no time. She placed her tablet on the desk and activated it, projecting images and documents onto the wall. "Senator, I need your help. These are illegal experiments conducted by Novatech under the leadership of Victor Lang. They've been using human subjects, prisoners taken from Earth, and experimenting on them with AI technology." Hayes' eyes widened as she studied the evidence. This is monstrous. Do you have proof?" "I do," Lena replied. "But it's not just about the experiments. It's about the cover-up. Someone framed me to keep me quiet, tampered with court records, and tried to destroy my reputation, all to protect Lang and his operation." Hayes frowned, leaning back in her chair. "If this gets out, it'll cause chaos. People won't trust the system anymore." "That's because they shouldn't," Lena shot back. "The system is broken, Senator. It's being controlled by people like Lang. But if you expose this, you can show the world that justice is still possible." Hayes hesitated, clearly weighing the risks. Finally, she nodded. "All right, I'll take this to the Senate Ethics Committee. But it won't be easy. Lang has allies everywhere." "I know," Lena said. "That's why we need to act fast." The next morning, news broke across every major outlet. Senator Patricia Hayes had called an emergency hearing to investigate allegations of corporate misconduct involving Novatech. The internet exploded with speculation, and protesters gathered outside government buildings demanding answers. Victor Lang, however, didn't seem worried. In fact, he appeared almost amused when reporters cornered him outside his headquarters. "These accusations are baseless," he said smoothly, his polished smile never faltering. "Novatech is committed to ethical practices. Anyone claiming otherwise is spreading lies." Behind the scenes, though, Lang was furious. He summoned his top advisors to a private meeting where he paced the room like a caged animal. "Find out who's behind this," he snapped, "and make sure they disappear." His words sent a chill through the room, but no one dared question him. Lang had built his empire on fear, and those who crossed him rarely lived to tell the tale. Meanwhile, Lena and her team worked tirelessly to gather more evidence. Ben hacked into Novatech's servers again, uncovering emails and memos that directly implicated Lang in the illegal experiments. Rachel interviewed former employees willing to testify against the company, while Emily provided first-hand accounts of the horrors she'd witnessed. As the hearing approached, tensions ran high. Lena knew Lang would try to discredit them, using his wealth and influence to twist the narrative. But she also knew the truth was on their side. On the day of the hearing, the Senate chamber was packed with spectators, reporters, and lawmakers. Cameras flashed as Senator Hayes took her seat at the head of the committee. Across from her sat Victor Lang, flanked by a team of expensive lawyers. "Mr. Lang," Hayes began, her tone formal but firm, "you've been accused of overseeing illegal experiments involving human subjects. What do you have to say in your defense?" Lang smiled confidently. "As I've said before, these claims are absurd. My company operates within the law, and I welcome any investigation that proves my innocence." Hayes nodded, then turned to Lena. "Ms. Porter, please present your case." Lena stood, her voice steady as she addressed the room. She projected the evidence onto a large screen, walking the committee through each piece, step by step. She showed videos of the labs, financial records linking Lang to the facilities, and testimonies from whistleblowers like Emily. "This isn't just about Novatech," Lena concluded. "It's about accountability. For too long, powerful corporations have operated above the law, exploiting the vulnerable and silencing dissent. Today we have a chance to change that." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Even Lang's lawyers looked uneasy, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. But Lang wasn't ready to give up. He leaned forward, his expression calm but menacing. "Ms. Porter, you claim to seek justice, yet your methods are questionable at best. You destroyed property, endangered lives, and violated countless laws during your so-called investigation. How does that make you any better than those you accuse?" Lena met his gaze without flinching. "Because I'm willing to face the consequences of my actions. Can you say the same?" The audience erupted into murmurs, some applauding Lena's bravery while others whispered nervously. Lang's composure cracked slightly, his jaw tightening. Before he could respond, Senator Hayes interjected. "Mr. Lang, given the gravity of these allegations, I move to place you under temporary arrest pending further investigation." Lang's lawyers immediately protested, but Hayes held up a hand. "Enough. The evidence speaks for itself. If you truly believe in your innocence, then prove it in court." Security officers stepped forward, cuffing Lang as he sputtered in outrage. Reporters rushed to capture the moment, their cameras flashing wildly. Outside, crowds cheered as news of Lang's arrest spread. That night, Lena stood on a rooftop overlooking the city, the lights of D.C. twinkling below. Rachel joined her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You did it," she said, handing one to Lena. "Lang's going down." Lena took a sip, her expression thoughtful. "For now. But there are others like him. This isn't over." Rachel nodded. "No, it's not. But tonight we celebrate. Tomorrow we keep fighting." Lena smiled faintly, gazing at the stars. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but she had proven something important. Even in a world dominated by greed and corruption, justice could still prevail, if people were brave enough to stand up for it. The days following Victor Lang's arrest were a whirlwind of activity. News outlets couldn't get enough of the story, how a single woman had taken on one of the most powerful corporations in the world, and won. Lena became an overnight sensation, her face appearing on every screen and newspaper. People called her a hero, a symbol of resistance against corporate greed. But Lena didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired. The weight of everything she'd been through, the lies, the threats, the lives lost, pressed heavily on her shoulders. Still, she knew the battle wasn't over. Arresting Lang was just the first step. There were others out there, waiting in the shadows, ready to pick up where he left off. One evening, after another long day of interviews and meetings, Lena found herself sitting alone in a quiet park near her apartment. The air was cool, and the sound of rustling leaves filled the silence. She stared at the fountain in the center of the park, its water shimmering under the soft glow of streetlights. "You look like you could use some company," a voice said behind her. Lena turned to see Rachel approaching carrying 2 cups of tea. She smiled faintly and accepted one. "Thanks." Rachel sat beside her, sipping her drink. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," Lena replied, though her tone suggested otherwise. "It's just overwhelming, you know? One minute, I'm fighting for my life, and the next, everyone's calling me a savior. It doesn't feel real." Rachel nodded. "People need someone to believe in, and let's face it, you've earned it." Lena shook her head. "I didn't do this alone. None of it would have happened without you, Ben, Emily, all of us." "That's true," Rachel admitted. "But you're the one who kept pushing when things got tough. You never gave up even when it seemed impossible." Lena sighed, staring into her cup. "I just hope it makes a difference. Lang's gone, but the system that allowed him to thrive is still there. Until we fix that, nothing really changes." Rachel placed a hand on Lena's shoulder. "You've already made a difference. Look at what happened today." Earlier that afternoon, Senator Hayes had announced the formation of a new committee dedicated to investigating corporate corruption across Earth and Mars. The initiative, dubbed the Justice Reform Act, aimed to hold companies accountable and ensure transparency in all operations. It was a small victory, but a meaningful one. A few weeks later, Lena returned to work at the Department of Justice. Her role had changed, though, not because she wanted it to, but because people demanded it. She was now the head of a newly created division focused on interplanetary ethics and oversight. It was a daunting task, but Lena welcomed the challenge. Her first order of business was assembling a team. Rachel joined her along with Ben, who was thrilled to have access to advanced technology for his investigations. Emily also signed on, eager to help rebuild the lives of those affected by the experiments. Together, they formed a tight-knit group, determined to prevent history from repeating itself. Their early days were spent reviewing cases flagged by whistleblowers and analyzing data from both Earth and Martian colonies. They uncovered smaller operations linked to Novatech, shutting them down before they could grow. Each success brought them closer to their goal, but Lena knew the fight would never truly end. One evening, as the team gathered in their office to celebrate another victory, Lena stood quietly in the corner watching them laugh and joke. Despite everything they'd been through, they still found joy in the little things, a reminder that humanity's spirit couldn't be crushed. "Hey, boss," Ben called, waving her over. "Come join us. We're about to toast our latest takedown." Lena smiled and walked over, raising her glass with the others. "To justice," she said simply. "To justice," they echoed. As the night wore on, Lena stepped outside onto the balcony overlooking the city. The lights stretched endlessly, a sea of hope and possibility. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel a sense of peace. Behind her, footsteps approached. It was Senator Hayes, holding a folder. "I thought I'd find you here," she said, handing it to Lena. "This just came in, thought you'd want to see it." Lena opened the folder and scanned its contents. Inside was a proposal for a global treaty, banning unethical AI experimentation, and ensuring fair treatment for all humans, regardless of their location. It was ambitious, perhaps even unrealistic, but it represented a step in the right direction. "What do you think?" Hayes asked. Lena looked up, her eyes shining with determination. "I think it's exactly what we need, but it won't be easy." Hayes chuckled. "When has anything worth doing ever been easy?" Lena nodded, closing the folder. "All right, let's get to work." Months passed, and the treaty gained traction. World leaders debated its terms, activists rallied support, and citizens demanded change. Through it all, Lena remained at the forefront, advocating for accountability and transparency. She traveled between Earth and Mars, meeting with officials and survivors, sharing stories that inspired action. One day, during a speech at a conference in New York, Lena addressed a packed auditorium. Her voice carried strength and conviction as she spoke. "The road to justice is long and difficult," she began. "There will always be those who seek power at any cost, who exploit the weak and silence dissent. But we cannot let them win. Not now. Not ever." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We are stronger together. When we stand united, we can overcome anything. Today, we take another step toward a better future. A future where no one is above the law and where everyone has a voice." The crowd erupted into applause, standing to cheer as Lena stepped away from the podium. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment for posterity. Afterward, as she walked through the bustling streets, a young girl approached her, holding out a drawing. It showed a figure standing tall, surrounded by stars with the words "Thank you" written in bold letters. Lena knelt down, smiling. "Did you draw this?" The girl nodded shyly. "You're my hero." Lena felt a lump rise in her throat. She took the drawing gently, folding it carefully before placing it in her pocket. "Thank you," she whispered. "But remember, you're the real hero. Never stop believing in yourself." As the girl ran back to her parents, Lena stood, gazing up at the sky. The stars twinkled brightly, a reminder of how far they'd come and how much farther they had to go. That night, Lena sat in her apartment, staring at the drawing. She thought about everything she'd fought for and everything she still hoped to achieve. The fight for justice was never-ending, but it was worth it. Every life saved, every truth uncovered brought them closer to a world where fairness and equality weren't just ideals. They were reality. With a deep breath, Lena opened her laptop, ready to draft her next plan. The journey ahead would be challenging, but she wasn't afraid. She had faced the worst humanity had to offer and emerged stronger, and as long as there were people willing to stand up for what was right, there was hope. For Lena Porter, the fight wasn't just about winning, it was about proving that justice mattered, that even in the darkest times, humans could rise above, united by courage and compassion. And so the battle continued.